2.5, our notes on similar figures. So we know that congruent figures have the same sides and angles. That's what we've already learned. But similar figures have proportional sides and congruent or the same angles. So if they are similar figures, like these two triangles here, notice that this angle corresponds to this one corresponds to this one, and this one corresponds to this one. So it's got side lengths that are congruent, or excuse me, angles that are congruent. But notice this triangle is smaller than this one. But notice they still have the same relationship. So this side is the smallest side, this one's the longest side, and so forth. So it's got proportional side lengths. So how can we say that? We can say that the proportion of side length AB compared to side length AC is equal to the proportion of side length DE compared to side length DF. So I'm saying that this one over this one is the same as this one over this one. And I could do that with the other sides as well, but just showing that they do have the same proportion. This fraction, or if I divide these two numbers, will give me the same numbers if I divide those two numbers. The angles are congruent to each other, and it didn't show up very well, but this says angle A is congruent, and congruent, we put an equal sign with a squiggly sign above it with angle D. And that's what each of these have as well. They have the congruent symbol on them. So angle B is congruent to angle E, and angle C is congruent to angle F. So angle C is congruent to angle F. And the other one was angle B is congruent to angle E. So I'll rewrite those for you, make it a little bit easier for you to see. So then how do we say that they are similar to each other? Well, this symbol means similar to. So we can say that triangle ABC is similar to triangle DEF. And again, I'm just rewriting that part that was already here because it showed up very faint on the screen. Okay, so a common error when writing a similarity statement, make sure to list the vertices of the figures in the correct order. So if I say A, then B, then C, I would have to say D, then E, then F. I can't say F, E, and D. They have to be listed in the same order to each other. All right, so how do we figure out if they are congruent or if they are similar? So if they're going to be congruent figures, that means same sides and same angles. If we look at these three rectangles, we know all of them are rectangles, and all rectangles have 4 right angles. So even without that being written in, I know that right away their angles are all right angles. But now we need to see if there's a proportion that is the same between our two side lengths. So if I compare the bottom side length to the side length, it becomes 6/3. If I compare this bottom to this side, it becomes 6/2. If I compare this bottom to this side, it becomes 4/2. Well, 6/3 simplifies to 2. 6/2 simplifies to 3, and 4/2 simplifies to 2. So which of them are congruent? Well, rectangle A is congruent to rectangle C. So I can use words and say rectangle A, not congruent, is similar to rectangle C. Rectangle B is not similar. Even though they have 4 right angles, it doesn't have the same proportion between the two sides. So when I compare this side length compared to this side length, they don't have the same ratio. This one actually ends up being longer than the others compared to how tall it is. Okay, So finding an unknown measure in similar figures. So now they are telling us that they are similar. So we know for a fact that these two triangles are similar. And I now want to know what this side length is. So to do that, I can write and solve a proportion. So I'm going to compare the left side on top over the right side on bottom, which means the left side on my second triangle has to be on top and the right side has to be on bottom. And now I'm going to solve this equation. So to solve this equation, I can use cross multiplication. Cross multiplication is where you have an equal sign between two fractions. And what you're going to do is you're going to multiply the 6 times the x together and the 8 times the 9 together. So I'm multiplying across, makes an x when I do that. And then I can solve it. So this is a one-step equation at 6 times x. The way we get rid of multiplication is with division. So I can divide it, and I get x is equal to 12. So my answer would be 12 meters. Go ahead and try number 2 and number 3. Again, you're finding the missing side length on each of these. Write your proportion, set up that equation, and then solve it. And when you're finished, go ahead and check back in and see how you did. So pause the video right now, try them, and then replay the video when you are ready. Okay, so I'm going to set up the proportion 6 over x is equal to 9 over 6. That's not the only one you could have done. You could have set up x over 6 is equal to 6 over 9. Both of those will give you the same answer. So I'm going to cross multiply so that I can solve. So 6 times 6 is 36, 9 times x is 9x, and then divide both sides by 9. So I find the missing one is 4 feet. You'll get the same thing if you used the second proportion that I set up. It's also okay if you put these two on the left and these two on the right. It doesn't make a difference as long as the 6 and the 9 are in the same positions compared to each other and the x and the 6 are in the same position. So same thing over here, x and 6 are both on bottom. Over here, x and 6 are both on top. So they do have to have this side length corresponds in the same spot on the other side with this side length. All right, check and see how you did on the last one. So I can set 14 over x is equal to 7 over 12. I can cross multiply, so 14 times 12 is 168, and 7 times x is 7x. When I divide both sides by 7, I get x is 24, so I get 24 centimeters for my answer. So there's two things you need to make sure and be able to do. You need to be able to identify whether two figures are similar or not. And if you're told that they are similar, then you also need to be able to solve and find the missing side length. So take a second, write a summary on those two things, and then make sure you star or mark anything that you have questions on. Remember, you're not expected to be an expert on these by watching the video, but this should give you a starting place so tomorrow in class you know what kind of questions you can ask so that you can start understanding it a little bit better. Take a second, write your summary, and that's it for today.